Auzubillahi minash-shaytanir-rajeem. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Assalamu alaikum viewers. I'm your host FAIZA with the prayer. May Allah keep you all safe, healthy, blessed, and keep you under His protection. And may Allah hasten the appearance of Imam of our time, inshallah. Today the topic we are about to discuss is related to the relationship of human being with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, especially when it comes to introducing a God to a child and a religion to a child, because God and religion both are very important and very significant things in our life. They play a vital role in our lives and help us build our character, our this dunya and akhirah as well. So we need to understand what are the best methodology when we are introducing God to a child and religion to a child, and what kind of mistakes we do make when we are doing that, and where we lack and where we should keep an eye on when we are talking about God and building a strong, healthy, and right relationship with Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. On this important topic, we have a very special guest with us today, and we will move on to our guest, Sister Fahima Mahmood, who is relationship coach, qualified relationship coach, and NLP CBT, and currently studying neurosciences and mental health. We move on to our guest and welcome her on to our show. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Fahima. Thank you so much for joining in for such an important topic. I'm really honored to have you on the show, and it's always pleasure to have you with us.
Alaikum salam. Thank you so much for inviting me, and I really do love the topic. So yeah, I appreciate the invite.
Thank you so much, Sister. You are a relationship coach as well, obviously, and dealing with so many relationship in our life, which we practically have in our lives. So when it comes to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala and our relationship with Him, and especially when we are introducing Allah Subhanahu wa Taala to our child or the children or the young people, so what do you think is the best methods we can adopt? And before going on to the best methods, first of all, I would like to know how important it is for us to understand the significance of this topic, and how important it is for us to understand first that how important it is, and how we need to project this to our children or introduce this to our children.
Well, the first question you asked about how we build that relationship and connection with our creator. And for me, the answer is very simple. It's basically learning and understanding yourself. And as parents, when we want to transfer information, we need to be very much geared up ourselves. And in order to be geared up ourselves is that we need to practice and continuously learn. As we know that knowledge is encouraged in Islam. So that knowledge doesn't stop when you stop going to madrasa, for example. And unfortunately, a lot of the times, our Islamic teachings and learning is very limited to that time only. When the time you leave is when the time you actually need to still continue and to progress. Even if you're in higher education in the sort of like academic world, in the secular sort of education, we do need to continue with Islamic education, which a lot of us don't, because we always concentrate on, the sort of like material world, which is something that we definitely need to do in order to live and survive. But I think alongside that, if we do that, then we can actually build not just your connection, but actually our livelihood. And with that, we become much more confident to transfer our knowledge, our practice to our children. So I think that is first and foremost. And I think a lot of us really forget that. And we think we've learned the basics by, maybe memorizing a few surahs, even the whole Quran, for example. And, you ask someone who is Hafiz al-Quran, what does it actually mean when it comes to everyday life? They will give you the translation, but they can't give you the practical side of it unless you go into further Islamic studies and understanding. So again, we need to be very careful how we learn our religion. And I think teenagers, more importantly, need to be encouraged to continue and not stop when they reach like GCSE or a certain age, because they think, oh, now we need to concentrate on the normal school, because that's a distraction. If anything, that's an enhancement for you to continue in your life and to make particular choices. I think the way we understand faith and religion is knowing the basics, learning how to, pray Salah and, read Quran and do it in parrot form without actually giving it its meaning and its true essence, for us to actually live it, because our faith teaches us to live it. We do have a very good practice amongst our Muslim community where we will, put our kids from a very young age to the Islamic schools to teach them, which is great. But I think the format in the way in which they are taught needs to be revised. And I think that they're not in line with the psychology and development of child learning, and they're even generally schools, to be honest. So as Muslims, we should really be at the forefront of understanding this, so that we don't pressure our children more than they need. And then when they need to really continue with their studies, they're burnt out. So there's a lot to unpack in this conversation. So that's hopefully going to give you an introduction as to what my thoughts are so far.
Sister, tell me, obviously when we as a Muslim, when a child is born, we give azan in their ears. Obviously we start from, and if we go little behind, even in the womb we ask mother to pray, for instance, or use duas as like recitation of duas, different duas from even Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, dua kumail, dua shabaniya. There are so many different duas through which we can teach our child in the womb, like this is the God we are talking to, and that's how we are discussing our issues, or our we are trying to give ourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through these du'as, and we are communicating and connecting. So how important these things plays a role, and how important these are, and especially before the birth of a child, when a mother is doing that, how it helps in building that relationship of a child to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How you see it?
That is so important. I'm glad you said that, because a lot of us think that we have to wait till they're born, but you start before, when they're already in your womb, as soon as you know, and we're having Quran in the background and listening to it. And, at the end of the day, there's so much science and research to show that a child can respond even when they are in the womb. That's why they're so close and connected to certain voices and certain things around them when they are actually coming into this world, because it starts from the womb. So today, I think that's really vital. So science proves that as well. And also, having those daily practices of, having Quran in the background, even if it's for like 10 minutes every day, or when you're lying down, or just before sleep, or while you're cooking in the kitchen, or whatever you're doing, there's so many different methods that we could use. So to have these daily practices while the child is in your tummy growing, it does start very early, so that when they hear it afterwards as well, there's some sort of familiarity. On the other hand as well, we also need to understand that, other practices in the household is so important, because children, they realistically learn by mimicking. So they watch and they copy what they watch, see, hear, and listen to, more than even what you are actually just, vocally trying to order them. And there's a way in which you have to teach children. There's a certain way in which children even learn. And we have to understand how their brain is developing, how they understand and see certain things at certain ages, so that we can also, adjust ourselves, so that we're not actually coercing and forcing, and we're not putting the pressure and causing anxiety, because I think that's what happens a lot, even in the schools, where, everyone's put, again, like sheep, and they all are meant to be like machines in order to perform in a particular way, but their development is still very fresh. And they need to learn through play. They need to learn through repetition. Their working memory, their executive functions are still developing in the brain. So I don't think we understand that. And we need to obviously know more about the development of the brain, the functions of, what is happening in a child. And when they're at their peak is when they actually leave learning, like I said, that's when they can really grasp it. But you create the habit from a young age. And in Islam, it is encouraged to teach them very young. And it's not to force them, but if you are praying and they watch you, then they want to just copy you. You see that so many times when you watch children, that they just copy you all the time, and they want to place this sajada next to you if you buy them something. If you know, really young, it's all about the action. It's all about you doing certain things, and they will copy you. So that's so important. So you are the first role model without speaking, right? And that's what we need to understand. And every minute they are absorbing, and they are sponges. So your words, your language, how you into Islam, and even at a young age when they're trying to develop their understanding of God, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you need to obviously mention it in different terminology and languages so that they can understand. And don't just use language as in, you know, which is going to either scare them or make them feel that it's an actual need. Look at it as values, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is loving, He's caring, He's compassionate, He's forgiving, He's a provider, He's a protector, you know, things like that. And we tell stories, riwayats, things like that, because even as adults, we sort of love to listen to stories. So as they get a little bit older, you teach them stories, and then that's how they learn about life around them, and then they can make decisions for themselves.
Sister, here from your discussion, I've got some point in my mind, and I would like to discuss that with you as well. When we talk
Sure.
about Janab Khadija Salamullah Alaiha speaking to her daughter Fatima Salamullah Alaiha, and we see that both are speaking to each other. How do you relate this to our practical life when we we are becoming mothers, speaking to your child for in that way? For example, if we do it through in a disciplined way, for example, one mother who is who is pregnant and going to be a mother soon, inshallah. So if, for example, she disciplined her timing in that way, that for example 4 to 5 I'm going to read Quran to my child, and for example this before sleeping, 15 minutes I'm going to tell a story, for instance, in whatever way they like. How would it impact on the brain of a child who is in the womb? Would it make any difference, like creating that kind of discipline before even the child is born, or would it be like, no, it's fine, normal, it's just like the other things we do in journal, and it would have same impact or something?
Well, if you can create disciplines and habits for yourself, then it's easy for you to implement that with their children. A lot of parents really do suffer enforcing certain things on their children is because they themselves don't have the disciplines in their own practices. So it's like, you know, children see things and they're like, well, you're not doing it, or you're not, you know, in a particular way. And it's not about just giving orders and listen, but don't, you know, question me. Like, again, we need to be a reflection. We need to be an example. And as a human, we are much more better at being organized. And as children, they feel safe and secure as well. If they know there's a certain routine, if they know in advance what's going to happen, it creates less and less sort of, you know, arguments or sort of like limitations on what they need to do because they know the routine. And if you build that with yourself, you build that with your children, and then you can do so much more. Obviously, it's so obvious when it's a disorganized home, then obviously everything else filters and everything else is disorganized, just like your children. And I know we love them at the beginning and we don't mind what time they sleep, what time they eat, and it's okay. But actually, and even though in Islam it says up to 7, you play with them, but even if you play with them, you can't play with them all day. It has to be sort of like in a routine, in a sort of disciplined manner, in a way that they feel that they have a balance as well. So as much as you're playing with them, you're not giving them that complete sort of rope so that they have absolutely no way of knowing that, you know, at the end of the day, there's a boundary. When there's no boundaries, then generally humans anyway, they feel lost and they actually don't like it. As much as we complain about, you know, not having the freedom, but when we have it, we actually are feeling much more restricted because we need those restrictions and boundaries to keep us sort of like in line, in place, and know our limitations. And it's the same with children. So again, from your question, I really think that there is absolutely nothing wrong in setting times and routines. Everything in place will work because you're doing it for yourself from beforehand. and later on it becomes so much easier and your children follow.
Hmm. It's like, sometime, if we something is there are time for something, then we start waiting for it. So if a child is doing that, like a mother is doing that for a child in the womb, they might be like in connection with that time for that particular, for example, recitation of Quran or dua or something like that. And it, I feel personally like it would be very beautiful, in terms of creating that connection. And after, like, obviously when a child is born, how you see, like, how obviously children through parents understand God, obviously. How, as you mentioned earlier as well, like how forgiver, like how forgiving, compassionate, loving, caring and kind, for example, a mother or a father is, and how loving or beautiful, nourishing environment they have around them. It would help them to have that introduction of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a indirect way, obviously. So one thing is how important that kind of healthy environment is. And secondly, how we introduce Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like for example, how we would tell them, like, no, we are not the God, we are his creation and you are his gift to us, for instance. So what is the best method when we have to introduce them, like when they are like in early years, you can say?
Well, you kind of just said it already. The fact that, when people are questioning how we are born, and kids normally do wonder when they are in their early learning of language and speaking, and they want to understand the existential world. It's their meaning, their purpose, why we're here, who is God, who is our creator, how we were born, things like that. These are very, very obvious questions. And again, it needs to be very careful how you use language, how you prepare your child. And each child, even at a similar age, might be different depending on their cognitive abilities. So you have to be quite aware, knowing that you're saying something that it's going to open them up for more questions, and you're going to be ready for those questions, because children, they just question, question, question. And, Islam has a lot of answers, but again, there are different stages in which, and their brain is plastic at a young age, meaning that it can adjust and adapt according to you. So it is your primal time to make that influence, and you can influence, but don't
Mm,
do it in a way where they feel that they cannot be open to ask questions. And I think that's the problem, because we don't want to question, we feel that, oh, it's haram, or, to question this, that, and the other. That is the most important time for them to question, and for you to be able
mm,
to have those answers ready in order to
mm,
understand. And obviously different levels and different stages, you'll have much more distinct answers. You can keep it very simple at the very beginning, and again, you use examples, analogies, and a lot of things that can actually relate, like how you look at the earth, the way in which it grows, the way in which its fruition, and the way in which you look at nature, and you start with that. You plant a seed and how it grows, and you're the one that's putting it there, and where is it coming from? So you, in a way, look at life, at humans in that way, and growth. And you look at,
mm,
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not as a human being, but as like an entity, like as an energy that's also within you to protect you and always around you, so that you give them that sense of connection, which is forever. And that's when later on in science they'll be able to understand certain things, but it does
mm.
coincide with our religious beliefs as well. No one can
So,
really truly explain it the way we want, but it's a
mm,
good start to look at nature, and then sort of like be adapted to how life is as well with humans.
mm. So, sister, tell me something, Sister Fima, like how important for a parent, for instance, to have that kind of understanding of God himself or herself. Because I personally feel, I don't think so, like in our general environment, not for everyone, even though we do have God and religion too much in our life in different way, but it's more like a cultural side, or maybe a
Yes.
some kind of emotional side, but there is no there's nothing like a logical side. Obviously the day and time we are living in, and these children are going to be like facing the world, for instance, is entirely different from what we have seen and we have been grown. So how important it is for having that like kind of parental counseling or strategies they need to learn, for example, even though if they don't go anywhere, but at least they should read about these things, or they should learn about these things, so that they can convey right message at right time. Because obviously in first 6 7 years of their life, as you said and mentioned in your discussion as well, and I've obviously as a mother do have experience as well, that children do ask so many questions, and if you keep answering them, it will take like hours and hours and hours of discussion that would never even end. The way they ask, and they are natural questions, and they have the right as well. So how we can for example learn those best strategies as a young parent, for instance, especially the mothers who have under 5 or under 7 children, and how we can create that balance where, okay, where if we don't know the answer, we can respond them in such a way that that is not something like negative thing or negative impact on them, like how you see that.
Again, that's a very good question, and it starts with the self, you understanding and having the knowledge more than just the basics. We do need to read. There's a lot of resources out there which will help us. You take a course to understand, and it's not just the basics. We need to understand the jurisprudence. We need to understand the fact. We need to understand a lot of things that makes us who we are and why we are here. And obviously there are differences as well. I think parents really need to understand that their job and their responsibility is a skill, and they are going to be accountable for it. And bringing children in the world is amazing, but if you're not geared up for it, you are doing yourself injustice and your children and the next generation. So I take it very seriously, and I always talk to parents and say, this is not just about procreation and getting married and saying I've got 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, so many kids, and they're all boys or whatever it may be. If you're not giving them substance, you're not giving them content, because they're going into presenting your name, your family, society, and you as a Muslim. So you need to understand your reason why you're here. You need to get that knowledge and know how to transfer it to your children, and to do it in certain ways where when they are young and when they are teenagers and even when they're young adults, they will still come to you because you do have those answers. And you've got to set boundaries. When they're young and they're asking to have certain family times, you have after school or you dinner time, and this is how we talk, and now we stop and we'll continue the conversation later on. Again, everything is about rules and boundaries. We can't also accommodate continuously, and you can ask them down and we'll answer it. You can have different methods, but it's not just about talking. Again, it's more about showing. And you go to certain places, people go on holiday and they don't talk about the history of the country and Islam. They just go into the malls and they take them, just for the modern day kind of holiday to the beaches. But at the same time, you need to be able to explore this world. And there's so much around that we can learn from in every opportunity that we take, right? Even if you're sitting on your home, and a lot of us in our families, we go to majalis, we go to loads of gatherings, and there's loads of opportunities to learn. Again, like I started saying about the wayats, the stories of the imams and the prophets and things like that. It is all a so you have to know it yourself. Even the 99 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does it mean? Why is it there? What does it represent? Simple things like that. Okay, I used to give regular my local Arabic school, and it was fascinating to listen, and even if it was just 10-15 minutes before they start their lesson, just to build them up to say, what you're doing is such a privilege, to be able to sit in a school and learn about this, because a lot of people don't have that privilege. So we don't talk to them like that. Look at it, even the parents, they send them to Saturday school or Sunday school thinking it's just like daycare, but they're not actually enforcing it. These schools are there to help you, but the real enforcement is house, okay? And, teaching them the discipline, the akhlaq, the manners, all of that is part of Islam, okay? As much as you love your children, if you're disciplining them, it doesn't mean that you're punishing them. If you're telling them there's a boundary and there's a limit, it doesn't mean you're being horrible to them. So parents need to understand that, and they need to work on themselves with that. And just because you didn't get something in life and you're like, I'm going to give my kids everything and I'm going to spoil them because I didn't have it, is that really for their goodness? No, it's not. And I hear that all the time. Kids are brought up very privileged homes and schools, and they get everything. And those are the ones that have the most mental health illnesses, because they don't understand resilience, they don't understand hard times, and they're not actually learning. And if they're learning, they're looking at it as just another subject. It's not another subject. Our Islam is a way of life, but our parents are looking at it as another subject to learn. And then just do certain things in Muharram and Ramadan and you're done. It's fine. And, every now and again go to certain, occasions. No, it's not about that. It's in between your salah, which is every second of the day, is how you're performing, the decisions you're making, the choices you're doing. And how is that choices being made is only because you are thinking and you are observing and you realizing that everything, has a consequence. So when you teach your children from a young age that their choices, whether it's influenced by you or they're thinking that they make their own choices as they get older, it's an influence because it's like you're doing it for the sake of who and what. So you teach that all from a young age, they will have that conscious mind. They will have it. They will always think twice. They will always wonder. So even if you're not on their back, they will always feel something around them because you've instilled it. So that, for me, is the way in which we have to live. Really, really important. And I like to stress this a lot because we get so carried away with this world and we're not understanding. And then when we haven't, go and hit a brick wall and then we think, why is life so unfair? No, you've created it for yourself. That's how I look at it.
No, that's really realistically and practically, these are the answer very practical, and obviously these are realistic as well, because the word we live in and the word we have in our mind and the practical word and actual way in which we are going to enter even after death or even when we are living at the moment, each and every time we are dying and living in every moment in many ways, you see,
Yeah.
because every breath we are taking, the new breath we are taking is life, and the last breath we have left is the death, obviously, of that moment, of that time, obviously. But do you think we do give value to our religion? And because you mentioned something related to that in your comment as well, do we give value in not in a sense, or the way you said, like we take religion and God as subject, not as a complete code of life, whereas religion and God is telling you in every breath you take, you have to do, for instance, this and that, or some, for example, you don't have to do this. And most of the time is not is always Allah is telling you not to do these things and telling you very less to do something. And like how you are going to treat people when even you are doing business, what kind of rules and regulations you are supposed to have, for instance, when we are making promises, what kind of promises you are going to make, and if you have promised something, you have to follow it, for instance. So these things are very, very crucial, and obviously they play a very important part, not only an individual life but also the life of this world as well, because we are adding, valuing or devaluing something in practical world, in terms of humanity, in terms of other people around us, or in terms of the world we have around us. So how you see, like especially when children are at teenage, and they are like getting bigger and obviously not that much mature as well, and they are more emotional as well as intellectual, you can say nowadays, the way they question and they think, see the things. So how we can help them, uh, like they don't get into the confusion, because for example, if I see, for instance, personally, if I see the background we have, generally we come from a very confused background in general, where good and bad are mixed, and sometimes we can't identify them, and we do have to have them as a compromise, for instance. So we end up on the wrong decisions in life, which are not even accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how we can help our children to bring that character in with the relationship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and religion, that they don't get up in that confusion, and they would know, okay, these are the straight set of rules, and these are the boundaries where I am supposed to, which I am supposed to follow or something. So how you see this?
I think what's really important here for answering your question is that we don't really build the bond and connection with ourselves. We don't know ourselves, let alone our creator. And then when our children come, we are very scared to even open up conversation. Now, if your children's asking you 101 questions, that wouldn't scare me personally, because I've trained and learned that, you know what, before they even ask me anything, I'm already asking them, and I'm building that bond with them. And I'm asking them in different ways. Like, for example, not like, how was your day in school? Because all they'll be like, yeah, it was fine. Like, what was good? What was bad, for example? What did you struggle with? What did you find fun? Because normally they will just generalize. There's different types of questioning that is, compound or open-ended or closed questions. So they can just say, it was fine, it was not, or you go further into it. And when you know that in life, when they come from school, even at a young age, they have fights with their, with a friend, or they have problems with a teacher, or they fell down, or they didn't get the right mark. Those are all opportunities for you to build that understanding about how life is, with challenges, with resilience, with how you need to live life and make certain choices. And that is the building blocks for you to somehow, without even mentioning religion and faith, you're teaching them about trust. You're teaching them about, building that kind of like, hope, or you're teaching them about life, right? So when they come to you with issues, and the more and more they come to you, is because you are, opening up the space for them. Even if both parents are working, you'll even have 10 minutes before bed. That sometimes is more than enough, because it's the quality time that you give them, and they know that you're there listening, you're opening up. And if it doesn't happen one day, but you continuously do it, it will create, and I've seen parents do this very successfully, where they have such amazing conversations with their children, and their children can't stop talking, even when they're adults, and even when they are boys to their parents, or girls, which you might think, or whatever people use, right? But yeah, culture does come into it, because if you feel that, oh, you're just going to feed them, clothe them, give them whatever they need to, and it's like, it's respect, it's disrespectful to talk about and ask questions and mention certain things, then obviously it's going to be a problem for them to open up to you. The minute you shut the door even halfway once, then, they're going to fall back and back and further and further. You know how many parents I speak to, and they're like, oh, I don't know, I haven't seen my son in like, so many hours, because they're sitting in the room. I'm like, excuse me? It's your house. The door should be opened. You go and check. They need to come out for some air, fresh air. Doesn't matter if they want to play all day. They do not take control over those children who they are responsible for, right? They do not have that power over them. And I don't mean power as in controlling. I mean as in an influence. They don't have family time and say, I'm sorry, Sundays we're going out, whether you like it or not. And we're doing this, we're doing that. We're going to go, visit here, there, and everywhere. And then we're also going to have conversations on the way in the car, or, when we go there, what did you learn from the lecture? What did you hear from a young age? Do that. What did you get from it? Even as a teenager, say, do you think it was worth it going? Why do you think we're going here? We're just going here because, at the end of the day, parents don't want to talk. They themselves don't want to talk. Okay. And if they asked even their teenage, what did you learn? Do you think it's worthless? If you really think it's boring and I'm forcing you, why do you think that? Didn't you just see a friend there? Didn't you just do this? You can really improvise. And I do this personally. That's why I'm saying it. So I feel that you really need to build the bond and connection with your children, so that they can actually open up to you, and they will come to you even as young adults, married. They'll come to you, okay? And they'll come to you when they because they want that. It's only because you leave them, and we have this sort of like stereotypical view of teenagers that they want to be left alone. No, they don't. They only want to be left alone because they know that you don't know how to handle them. But if you knew how to handle them, they will be your best friend, even as teenagers, right? So I know I'm living proof of that, okay? And I just feel that, and I've seen it in many families as well, but you need to really look at your life as, a job, more than the job itself. We are put here as, firstly, children, then we are responsible as well when we become adults to our spouses, to our own children, to our parents, all of that responsibility and a commitment. It's not just about just working and earning and learning outside. You've got to be able to filter that in your home. If you can't work and learn and earn and do whatever these things and not bring those fruitful things in your house, it's like you working and earning and you can't bring that money to give the amazing rich food. This is food for us. Okay,
mm,
if we are going to teach and learn and speak and and whatever problems your children have, use that as an excuse to talk about stories, to talk about life, to bring Islam into it, so that they
mm,
have an understanding more than just knowing that they're going to pray, they're going to fast, and that's going to give them the
mm,
sustenance, and
mm.
that is only the foundation. But you got to build those tree leaves and all of that. So that's what you
That's
got to do constantly.
Sister, you mentioned something, and from that point, I just came across something in my mind, so I want to share that as well. Like when, as a parent, we share our life. For example, as I speak to my daughter or my son, I always share, okay, that's how we used to go to school. That's how we used to go to majlis, for instance. This is the way we were used to learn. This is the, for example, if Ziyarat Imam Zaman alayhi salam, that was the first inspiration in my life, for instance, that has like kind of hit my heart so hard.
Mhm.
Every time I used to go to majlis, for instance, that was the ziyara that I wanted to listen to. And I never knew what it was and why we are reciting it at that age. And I tell them, okay, this is something happened in this age, and I was used to listen to this dua and this ziyara. I didn't know what it is, but I'm telling you now. So now your responsibility is bigger than mine, for instance. So how important for us as a parent to share these moments that has changed us as a person, or that has changed our motives of lives, in our lives, to share with our children. How encouraging, how empowering it is, for example, it is for them, for instance. And afterwards, I want you to summarize few steps which are very very important, you think, when we are introducing God and religion. Obviously we did have so much discussion, and we have discussed all the points, but still, sometimes some people do understand through steps, like this is the step
Steps,
one,
yeah.
two, three. Yeah.
Okay, so again, when we are having conversations, I think again we maybe hold ourselves back because we feel that we're not perfect. But I think children and generally people, they tend to come closer to you when you actually show your vulnerability. So to say that, I struggled at this age and I went through certain things, just like you mentioned, or I was inspired and this made a difference to my life, that again can open up conversation and also a different meaning to how children are going through what they're going through. Sometimes they're not going to open up to you. Sometimes they're too scared, or they just don't know how, or they're not ready yet, even if you're doing all the right steps. So don't stop talking and don't stop sharing. Like you said, if you're sharing your own life and not just only the best parts, because you're putting pressure on them to say, well, at your age, I was doing this and I knew this and I knew that. That again is also going to be pressure, right? But if you were to share that, I actually struggled and it's fine. And look at how we are now. That is really
Mm,
powerful. Okay, to
mm,
show your vulnerability, because everyone is struggling, but we're not talking about it. We're just posting the beautiful things, the lovely things, and social media, how it is, right? And that is the biggest influence. So if you share
mm,
your struggles and even post your struggles, which people are doing now, especially when it comes to mental health, that just shows to say, I'm human. I'm making mistakes, and as children, we can make as many mistakes as we want, as long as we know our parents are there to catch us when we fall, and they give you that security and they give you that support, and you're like, okay, let's try again. You don't know it, but you don't know it yet. That word yet makes a huge difference for them to know that they still need to keep carrying on. Just like when they don't remember, you show them videos when they wanted to walk. How many times did they fall? It didn't stop them. So, things
mm,
like that, simple things like that will show, look how strong you were when you were young and you didn't even know it. And you can still do
mm,
it now, even if you're struggling in your education and you're struggling in, learning this, surah or whatever it is. It's all about encouragement. It's all about showing that, life is tough, but we're here to help you and guide you. So those are the things that is important. And I think that's what children need. They need that support. They need
mm,
that, the real sort of like, showingness of vulnerability, so that they can actually feel that, even if they make mistakes, they can come to you and they can
mm.
actually, turn to you. I think that's really powerful, really powerful. So
That's true.
steps, I think, if you really want steps, is start early. It's really important to start early, and recitation of Quran and Salah, like I said, they are something that they will watch, they will mimic, they will learn, and they will, teach by example. The most important things is introducing Islam to a child is to demonstrate the principles and the practicals, the practices, right, of one's own behavior, and in accordance to, like, even when the kids are not needing to fast, but just now we have Ramadan coming, we know in a family, even the young ones, they're like, I'm not eating because you're not eating. They just want to copy you, okay, because it's a whole entire thing that everyone wants to do. So the young ones are much more encouraged because they're watching you. So how beautiful is that? Taking your kids in and being part of community is very important. As much as they have friends in school, whatever it is, when they are going to, the Islamic schools as well, encourage that. It's really good because they build different relationships with people that are like-minded, and at the same time, they know that they have a faith that, they're not going to be, judged on, and they can perform in that way, and they can have fun. They can go out where if there's restrictions, when they go out, it's normal. When they go to each other's houses, they pray because their families all pray, and they like playing, and at the same time the parents are encouraging them and emphasizing the love and mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So important to teach that, because a lot of us are teaching our children where we are scaring them, or we're talking about the halal and haram, when actually it's more about the love and the mercy and values, like how you mentioned. Don't just say you need to be honest. They need to look at their parents and say, that's what honesty is, because their parents never break a promise. That's what, integrity is. That's what not lying is, because they look at your parents and they see it. They have to be the example. So there's a lot of pressure on parents when they become parents, more than just raising them, but to bring them up in a particular environment, okay, so that they actually have that, so that even if they are making choices, they can compare. So why not you be the comparison which they can compare to? So when they look outside, they know, okay, this is right, this is wrong, and in my household, this is how it works. So don't what the other house do, okay? Because a lot of scared about how this is from outside. And yes, it's powerful, but you make your home powerful, then it wouldn't really matter. So those I would say is really important. Encourage questions, actually, because it opens up conversation, and also that they realize that there's so much more to learn. Understand that at the same time, those questions, if you can't answer it, say we'll figure it out, go and speak, or we'll find out. You don't have to have all the answers as well. It's not, you can show your vulnerability and say, you know what, I always wondered, and I knew that a long time ago, but now you reminded me, I have an answer for you, but let me just come back to you so I can give you the best answer, okay? So they can encourage you for your own learning that you've forgotten, and provide guidance, not by force, because Islam doesn't teach force, okay? We need guidance. It's really important that we understand that, because we are being seen as someone who is very forceful and oppressed and things like that. But when your children are choosing because you've given them all the beautiful meanings and understanding, and they just see it as such a wonderful pathway, you don't have a problem with them going outside, because you've shown them a beautiful lane. Why wouldn't you walk in it? And if they step out of it, they'll know the consequences. And you're like, okay, well, then come back online. That's how it is, right? The straight path. We sometimes will fall. We want to see what the other side is, okay? And you know that this is human behavior. You got to test it, especially when you're young. But at the same time, you got to show them and tell them, like, this is life. But unfortunately, if you are going to make mistakes, there are consequences. Okay, and those consequences, when you're young, maybe sometimes you can get away, but depending how severe your choices are, then you need to be careful. So you got to explore with them, travel with them, talk with them. You show them different experiences in life. And again, we are living in a world, much nature, with so much things around. That's the best explanation for things that even science explain. And even if you look at some of these discovery channels, it's amazing to see how this world is, and we are part of that creation. So that alone is an explanation in itself. Teach them about the science. What does the science say? The story and the theory of evolution. It is a theory. I study science, all right? It's a theory. It's not definite, right? Make them understand and say, look, you are encouraged now to have an identity, whatever it may be. So you've got your identity, be proud of it. So that's what it's
Mm.
about. We
Mm.
are living in a
Here,
world where it's kind of in that way.
yeah, beautiful steps you have shared, sister. And how you see, there is one point. Often I see when I see speaking ulamas or urfas words, like when I hear that, and gist of that part is like, do everything from the love of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. For example,
Yes.
how important it is for us to instill that. For example, if initially when I have read a hadith in which it was said by Rasul Khuda sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I mean, meaning of that was like love for friendship because of Allah. Do friendships with Allah because of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. And if you are becoming enemy of somebody, do it because of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. In other words, like, don't follow your ego, follow the love of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. Who is friend with Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, you are their friend. And if there is somebody who is open enemy like shaitan or somebody like that, then obviously you are enemy of them. So initially when I first time read that and thought about practically implementing it, it was quite hard. Like, oh my god, I won't love my children because of me. I mean, because of, like, for example, because we are so much connected to our own emotions and concepts and imaginations, or you can say ritualistic practices, that we feel like if we leave them, there will be some kind of vacuum. Whereas when I obviously tried it and saw it in this way, like, okay, we all have to love through Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. Like, if I love my child, I am going to marry, I am going to have children, I am going to do job, even I'm going to follow any profession, I will do it for Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, because all these blessings has come from Him and will go towards Him. So how you see that concept, and how important for us to introduce Allah as love, mercy, as you said before, Rahma, and it's how it beautify our life and this world as well.
Well, you said it beautifully, is that we have to do things for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we have to also understand our own ego. Our children are not our possessions. That's the problem. They are a gift to look after, right? And we're going to answer, and we are accountable for that gift to look after for a period of time. Even as mothers, as parents, fathers, whatever, you can love them so much. Even loving them more than your creator is not right. So again, we
Yes.
need to really pull ourselves back, and that's even with spouses and relationships. And I think that's where we're going wrong, because we are really going to be blinded in this dunya with so many things, and we need to be able to have the trust and the tawakkul. And the other thing I want to say is reinforcement and repetition is what gets you to get closer. So we need to be consistent with our practices, right? And we need to understand it very well and continuously learn and bring ourselves back. If we are going to pray 5 times for a whole month and then we're going to leave it because it's finished now, then obviously we're going to go back into, a different discord. We need to be consistent, just like how you want to go into the gym and you like, constant, you see you looking good, and, you want to continue with that. But we don't do that with our faith. And we only do it at certain times. And that's not going to serve you. We are our own enemies at the end of the day, because we pick and choose wrongly ourselves. And what's important that we don't see, we don't follow it. And we only follow it at certain times. So I think to build the love is to, if you love something, you constantly doing something. So you pray every day, you read Quran every day, you do your daily, du'as, all the time. So that brings that close connection. And you got to have the trust. As much as you are parents wanting to mollycoddle and, bubble wrap your children and in boxes, that's not healthy for them. You bring them up the best you know, and you say, Allah, I leave it to you in your hands, and you guide them. That's
That's
what
true.
is important. So you
Mm.
need to also have the trust yourself. If you don't have the
Mm.
trust, how are you going to instill that in your children? And you also
That's
have
true.
to, again, understand that, everything is a gift. Your partner, your husband, your wife, your children, your work, your sustenance, everything is a gift. You be grateful for it constantly, and you'll be given more. And just remember, it's not for you to hold on tightly because it's yours. It is not yours. Nothing is
Mm.
yours. You're
That's true.
there as, taking care for somebody else. and for our
We are
creator who's watching.
we are custodian, but we
Yes.
treat them as like we are the owner of these children, these possessions we have, in terms of any I mean anything we have, for example, whether it's material or in terms of relationship, or even if it comes to knowledge or anything, we think we are owners, whereas honor is just Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's the thing we need to teach to our children through our actions, as well, as you mentioned. Sister, I want you to you can complete that answer as well. Obviously, I've cut you inside in the middle, so
Okay.
can add a little more on that. And do tell me, because we are heading towards the end of the show as well, like what are the things we must avoid, we must not do when we are introducing God and religion, so that some of it you have mentioned earlier, like force, or like, no, you have to do it, this is something, or like these kind of forceful things, these are obviously wrong. But what else we can add, so that we would know, no, these are the things which are wrong, and it can have a very, very negative impact. Sometimes children do go very far away from religion, and they don't follow, and don't listen, and they don't want to listen. And in that time, parents are very much upset, obviously, like what to do. Our children are not listening, and it's too late now, we can't do anything. So what is the best methodology at that time?
Firstly, it's never too late. It's never ever too late. Um, I don't ever see time as you giving up. I think certain people also need it maybe later on in life. Or you can even build a bond and break a bond and you can build it again. There are many
Hmm.
blended families nowadays. So you're walking into people's lives very, very differently at different stages, and you can see influence and an impact. It's fine. And I think what you should not is mix culture with religion. Know
Hmm.
them very well, because I think a lot of us are living with culture more than religion. And I say this so much, and we don't practice it. Honestly, our religion is
Hmm.
so simple. It's so
And very, very
easy.
easy.
It's so, it's, yeah, it is very easy. And it's so simple. And actually, I think it's current with even today's time and day. It's the culture that's holding us back.
That's true.
Okay, it's the culture that's making it difficult. It's the culture that's putting all the pressure on what we need to do, whether it's even in marriage, the most simple thing, right? We make it so huge, okay, that people are actually avoiding it or not wanting it, and it's actually ruining people's lives. And that's just one example. Imagine anything else. So I think
Hmm.
really know your faith to its core and its foundation, and that is the simplicity of our faith. Then the rest is very, very easy. Your culture can be enjoyed, but it shouldn't be lived like as if it's your religion, which most people do. And I think
Hmm.
that's really important.
That's really true. So, sister, we are just left with the last 5 minutes. So, what is the best advice for the young children who might be watching you? Because we always give advice to parents, for instance, whenever we talk about
Mhm.
parenting and the principles. So, how would you suggest to the young children who might be sometime watching you, and like, what are the best ways to learn about your religion and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and what is inside? Because when I personally see, when we do things through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like for example, He is our foundation, and then everything else is because of Him, from Him, towards Him, and we are using it as you suggested or said, like it is our gift, or we are custodian of that thing. And it, I feel personally like it improves our relationships, and it does have an eternal impact on our relationship or anything we do, because it won't end up ever, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala
Mhm.
is free being, is not going to end ever. So in the same way, the relationship based on His love, His tawakkul, and because of Him, then ego won't be there, and it will last long forever, even after death, for instance. So how, what are the best advice you give to the young people who want to learn about God and religion? What best methodology they can adopt in order to understand about Him, apart from culture and other things? What is the best way?
I think the best thing as children or teenagers and when you're young, learning about faith is give it time. We expect as well to even build it and the love straight away. It is okay to feel confused. It is okay to not even have that connection straight away, but don't give up on it. Still continue. Because sometimes you might even end up being a young adult or much older in life, and then only you get it. And that's fine, as long as you're continuously striving. Islam is about becoming, but we put a lot of pressure as well. As soon as you're Muslim and you're born, you just got to have it all straight away. Or even if it's a revert that comes into our faith, it's like straight away they've got to put it all on you. It takes years for you to understand your faith. It takes years for you to build connection. It takes years for you to even get the answers. And if you don't
Mm.
feel that you are religious, if you don't feel it, don't leave it. Still practice and continue, right? And
Mm.
eventually it'll come to you. I think that's really important. So when you're young and you think, oh, I don't feel it, I don't know it, then you just want to go the other way because that's your excuse. No. Okay? Even if you're holding on by a string, hold to that string. And inshallah, it will get stronger and stronger, and you will get that rope that you will be able to feel safe to hold on to, and you'll understand it. So don't think that you have all, and this is not just to children, it's even to parents. With them feel, oh, I failed and my kid doesn't get it. Honestly, just keep going. Don't give up ever. No age, no time, right up to the last breath. You can be only getting it till then, and that's fine. As long as you keep striving. That's the best guidance I can give anyone right now.
That's the really right guidance, and I totally agree with you. And I did experience that in my life as well, personally. Like there are so many answers. I used to think about many things in a very young age, and now I'm getting the answers, or I'm and even then they are not completely complete answers. And then I just pick up bits and bobs, and I tell my children even, okay, look, this is the question I thought when I was in this age, and now I'm getting this answer to that extent, and it still has so much to learn about and think about. And it is really, it requires so much effort. And it's not, it doesn't mean that you are going to get tired of it, but you are going to enjoy it, and learning itself
Yes,
is an enjoyment. And thank you so much, Sister Fahima. I'm really honored to have you on the show. Time is up now, and it was
welcome.
so much I've learned from you, and it was amazing to have you always on the show. Thank you so much. And to the viewers, as Fahima said, never ever give up. It doesn't matter what stage you are at, you still have to keep going, keep having the faith you have in your life, and keep building the relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and reflect that in your relationship, the people around you, and everything you do. Inshallah, Allah will guide you all, and us all as well, in all the manners. Inshallah, I'll see you next week. Inshallah, have a great week, and have a great day. Allah Hafiz.